ESPN in town for Alabama LSU, the Fowler Herb Street crew on the call. Welcome in, Chris. Hope you're doing well today.
Morning, gentlemen. Doing good. It's a rare treat for us. We don't get to call very many SEC games. Haven't been here to call a game at Alabama in a while, and I've never called LSU Alabama. I was kind of wishing I could step back into the time capsule and do the 2019 game, but we're dealing with 2021 reality. But yeah, it's fun. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, that 2021 reality is a tough one for LSU fans to swallow. Alabama's still at that level. LSU is not. And, I mean, it's been a precipitous fall-off. There's no way around it. It has been shocking to see how they could go from 2019 to where they are now.
Yeah, it's not that different from what happened at Auburn. Auburn wins the championship, and then Chiswick paid the price for winning that title and getting expectations to that level, and they couldn't match it the 2 years afterwards. You know how quickly they fall out of love with you in LSU, too. I mean, when the party is raging, it's a great place to be, but then they get frustrated faster than just about any fan base I can think of. And look, the performance hasn't been good enough the last couple of years. There have been obvious reasons for that, but I didn't really foresee, as I sat there in the Superdome and watched that perfect storm conclude that amazing season, did not foresee them being a 500 team the next two seasons and having this kind of fallout. But it is what it is, and I hope they will show up and fight like hell, which they say they're going to do, and play with pride because it's personal for LSU every time they take on Alabama and leave whatever they've got left. And I don't know how much it is, and it probably won't be enough, but whatever they have left, I hope they leave it out there tomorrow night.
You know, Chris, ironically, that night when they hoisted the trophy, they beat Clemson. What's more surprising to you? They're 9-9 since winning that championship, or that Clemson sits at 5-3 in 2021?
Clemson's more surprising to me because, you know, even though they lost some great players, we know how Dabo's recruited, and we know that they're in the ACC, where it really doesn't take a great Clemson team to win that lot conference and be in the playoff conversation. An average Clemson team should be able to do that. But clearly it shows folks around the country, and including the ones who follow Alabama, it's more fragile than you think, right? Like you think you're on top, Clemson's a lock. No, it's not a lock, and it takes the loss of a special quarterback and Uiagalelei trying to get baptized, and that's clearly been a problem for their offense. I mean, I didn't imagine that Clemson's offense would fall apart like this. I mean, no one could have predicted that, including every person inside that building at Clemson. So that's been the biggest shock. Not that they've stumbled a few times, but they've looked like a very pedestrian, sometimes below average offense.
You probably can count the number of people on one hand that can get real information and emotions from Nick Saban about a team, and I think you and Herb Street are two of those people. How does he feel really about this team right now? Because he loved last year's team.
Yeah, that's a good question. We're about to sit down with him in about an hour, so we'll get a better indication with the one-on-one. I think from what I've heard him say before, he's felt like maybe the jury's still out. You know, you watch them practice. And by the way, they still practice really, really hard, better than other people. We don't see the Tuesday, Wednesday practices around the country, the real physical ones. We see a lot of Thursday practices. We don't see a lot like the one I saw yesterday. I mean, they work hard and they rep things again and again. I don't think I should say what they're repping, but they work really hard in certain areas. And it's interesting to see. And I think there's a good work ethic in this team. I don't think they look like, I don't know, the 2015 teams. Anybody ever look like they did when they had John Allen and A'Shawn Robinson and Jaron Reed and Tomlinson was a backup? And that was a frightening group. I don't know that this defense is that frightening. And when you watch the tape, and Bama fans know this better than anybody, you see confusion, you see misalignment, you see things we're not used to seeing. That part, I think, has surprised me. I thought the personality of this team would be much more defensive this year than it has been, and the offense would have a hard time keeping up with that production. As it turns out, even though fans around here like to whine and bitch a little bit, the numbers on offense are really, really good. And defensively, there's been a few more busts and a few more misalignments than I expected. There's still time to clean that up, but not much time. Like they better get serious about it if they want to try to win another championship. For me, that hasn't quite been there, at least on tape.
Chris Fowler is with us on the Pepsi Hotline. As you see, Kirk Herbstreit, Holly Rowe at Bryant-Denny Stadium, 6 o'clock Saturday night on ESPN. I don't know how to describe Bryce Young. It's almost like he's an unassuming star, but he may be the Heisman winner, the Heisman favorite, maybe the best quarterback in the nation. I don't know. But when you watch Bryce Young, what do you see out of him?
a guy who looks like a pro, 5-year NFL veteran. I mean, and that's been said before. I hate to use the word poise because it's been used a million times with him. It's a good word, though. We watch him in practice. He's not physically imposing. He looks littler even in person than I thought he would, surrounded by those linemen. But he has a very cool command. He doesn't practice with a fire and brimstone intensity, but the focus is there. The ball is beautiful coming out of his hand, and it doesn't hit the ground very often. And he practices hard too. I mean, he makes a lot of throws in practice. Obviously, he's trained to be ready for this, and he's going to have to be. But obviously, it's the mental part of it. I mean, we're gonna get a chance to meet with him for the first time. I bet we'll have the same impression that every announcing crew that's gone in to talk to him has had. Just cerebral, impressive, very calm. What you want in that position, and it's almost crazy to think that it's possible to be like that at this level as a first-year starter in college football. But we've seen these guys come along and do that. To do it at his age, though, is still special.
What's been more impressive, Mel Tucker in year 2 in East Lansing or Brian Harsin year 1 in Auburn?
I've been impressed by what Mel's done at Michigan State. I mean, you can make speeches and have the tough facial expressions and all that kind of stuff, which he did. He's a good fit at Michigan State. His team's performance, though, against Michigan, the game that annually is the measuring stick for a Spartan football team, it was really impressive. You know, to come from 16 down to rally to out tough them in the fourth quarter, long way to go. I mean, Michigan State is not the kind of team that's just going to roll out there and flatten people. So there might be a reality check coming when they go to Columbus in a couple of weeks. We'll see. But I've been very impressed. I'm a Colorado graduate, so I thought we made a great hire in getting Mel to Boulder. Had a nice time getting to know him. We were just kind of starting to get to know each other. Had a couple dinners, and boom, he bolts for East Lansing, which nothing personal. Well, a little bit personal, but I understand it from a business standpoint. And I wish he were still in Boulder building that program. But no, he's done a phenomenal job. Harsin's done a great job at Auburn, too. I guess I'm not as shocked by that. Michigan State's been a little bit more of a pleasant surprise, I guess, than Auburn has for me.
You said Alabama's defense isn't as frightening as they were in 2015. Georgia's is frightening. You saw them in week 1. What do you think of Kirby's chances of finally ending that 1980 streak this year?
As good as they've ever been. I mean, that defense is fun to watch. I like to call games that have an occasional offensive touchdown, as any announcer would. And so it was a weird opener, Georgia-Clemson, but we got a taste of it then. And we saw them in the Arkansas game too. And between that defense and the crowd, Arkansas rolls in there feeling confident, a little swag, and they got embarrassed from the first quarter on. And I love watching defenses that don't just feature 5-star talent. I mean, people around these parts, what a defense looks like that has that kind of talent, that has that kind of depth, that is beautifully coached. Georgia has the intangibles, though, guys. It's very evident when you talk to them, watch them, the way they play. And Bama defenses have had that over the years, too. These guys really like each other, care for each other, hold each other accountable, tremendous chemistry. And that comes through, tremendous pride. Like, they're bummed out and they're allowed 7 points to Florida, right? That's a pretty good offense. They smothered. And they wanted a shutout, and they were disappointed when they didn't get it. Now, every defense is going to run into an offense that can make some plays, that schemes them up. I don't know if that's going to be in Atlanta when they collide with the Crimson Tide or not, but it's just been a fun thing to watch, that kind of defense, because it's still, this has been a year when you've seen good defenses around the country sort of reclaim their footing, and the personality of the sport overall has not been 50 points a game everywhere. It's been more balanced back toward the defense, and I like that.
Always controversy when it comes to the college football playoff rankings. Hypothetical for you here. If Cincinnati goes undefeated 13-0 and Wake goes undefeated 13-0 as your ACC champion, would Wake jump Cincinnati?
No, they wouldn't. I love the hypotheticals. We used to do this when I hosted Game Day. We'd have these conversations like 2 or 3 weeks out. Undefeated Oklahoma State hosting Texas, or that's how the producer talked. That had these.
That's our show, though, Chris. We're hypothetical all the time.
Nothing's
but
better
we used
for
to throw that out there,
hypotheticals.
and I'm like, why don't we just wait before we make a decision of what game day is going to do 3 weeks? Listen, I mean, to me, Wake Forest doesn't have a very good case. I mean, they didn't go to South Bend and win. That's a massive win for Cincinnati. That's what they're hanging their hat on. The Indiana win has fallen apart a little bit. Not to say, look, Indiana's down to the third, fourth quarterback. They're not the same team, but when your resume is that thin and you got 2 Power 5 teams on it, you want them to stay competitive. It's good for Cincinnati. Notre Dame has recovered and got back into the top 10, but they got to clobber SMU, who's going to come in there. They might have to be at SMU twice to win their conference championship. If they do all that and some things happen, an Oklahoma loss, an Oregon loss, I mean, they're very much in the mix. To me, Wake Forest isn't really in the mix. I mean, sorry. I mean, they've had a tremendous year. They still got to play Clemson. I don't know. I mean, Cincinnati, I'm not shocked they're ranked outside the top 4 like a lot of the people around the country seem to be. I don't know if they're just new to this party, but they haven't noticed what's going on in the 8 years of these rankings. But it's not a fix. The fix isn't in. No one's sitting there in the star chamber and deciding how to vote Cincinnati down. It doesn't work that way. We want geographic balance in the playoff, guys. We want the idea that upsets are possible, that Cinderellas can have their way. That's what is hurting the popularity of the college football playoff. Same old, same old. Now, I know that's not what you want to hear down here, because Alabama is the same old. But if you look at it, I mean, they don't love when I talk about the business side of things, but the facts are there. Bama, Ohio State did not kill it in the ratings last year in a championship game. And on paper, it should have. That's a dream matchup. It didn't. And I think that people want some fresh blood in the playoff. I mean, we don't control the games. I'm long ago given up on that. But, you know, it's not like we sit here and want 4 teams from the Southeast or 2 teams from the SEC in the playoff bracket. That would not be ideal, frankly. We play the cards we're dealt, but there's no conspiracy out there. It drives me crazy when people think that ESPN or somebody, this is what we want, is all these same teams every year. Not really.
All right, he is Chris Fowler. You'll see Fowler, Herb Street, Holly Rowe, and since it's SEC officials, Bill LeMonnier will be there as well on ESPN Saturday night.
Wait a minute. Every conference complains about their officiating crew. You should go out to the Pac-12. You think SEC fans have beef? You should go to the Pac-12.
Chris,
or Big 12.
You've been very kind with your time. We greatly appreciate it.
I enjoyed it, fellas. Be well.
All right, you too. Take care. That is Chris Fowler of ESPN with us on the Pepsi Hotline.